Okay, I want to talk about victim blaming. Victim blaming. What a terrible fucking thing it is to victim blame. Whenever anybody talks about victim blaming, it's fucking negative, isn't it? There's no justification for victim blaming, right? You shouldn't victim blame. And yet I've never met a single person in my fucking life that does not victim blame. If I told you that I had a virus on my computer, if it wasn't the first thing you asked me, it would be the second, and you would say to me, did you have antivirus software on your computer? And if I said no, you'd say, well, why didn't you? What a stupid idiot. You know you should have antivirus software on your computer. Well, you've yourself to blame for getting that virus. That, my friends, whether you like it or not, is victim blaming of a sort. The point is, there's different kinds of victim blaming, and there's lots of different factors that are involved with victim blaming. So I was linked this article in the Sydney Morning Herald, and for me this summed up the perfect example of the wrong kind of victim blaming, objectionable victim blaming. Not in terms of the substance of what was being talked about, because I think that the article was making legitimate points, but because it was framed in a way in which the victim blaming that takes place is of the objectionable kind. So let me give you the example that's here and then discuss where I think the difference lies between acceptable and unacceptable victim blaming. If you disagree with me, then that's your chance to come back at me afterwards. So it was in the Sydney Morning Herald, May the 12th, 2015, titled "The Part Women Play in Domestic Violence," which is one of these things. I was linked on Facebook, and it's one of these things you think, what the fuck's that going to be about? Because you get linked to all kinds of things on social media. Sometimes you wonder why the hell somebody linked me this. I thought this was probably going to be to do with women being violent within relationships towards men. It wasn't. It's about women being on the receiving end of violence, and it's by a clinical psychologist called Sally McLaren, who apparently deals with a lot of perpetrators of violence and also a lot of victims of domestic violence. And what I won't do is just read out what she said, but I'll give you the thrust of what she said. And let me say that whilst I'm criticising the way that she's phrased some of this, I am sure she is acting in good faith, and I'm sure she's making the argument she's made because she wants to make things better. That's the first point that I want to make with regard to her. And the second thing is, I don't think that she's wrong in the substance of what she says, but what I think she's wrong is the way in which she phrases it. And we'll try and get on to that when I've given you the idea of what she said. So what she's suggesting is that acts of aggression take place within relationships, and if those acts of aggression, it might just be me telling you to piss off to begin with. If those acts of aggression are let slide, then they become normalised, and as a result greater acts of aggression take place and they become normalised, and eventually it's a kind of like a slippery slope or a thin end of the wedge. You end up with greater and greater acts, and as she says, eventually it ends up smacking, before you know it, it's reached 9 out of 10 and he's smacking her head into the wall and calling her a fucking cunt. Now, first, let me just say that what I don't get from this, right, is that we're talking about adults in a relationship. If we were talking about a parent, let's say a mother and a child, children need to be taught. And if children are allowed to do things that are unacceptable, then they learn that those things are acceptable and they do them again, right? And you can't really hold the child responsible for that. The children need to be taught. But when you're in a relationship with an adult, with another fucking adult, you expect them to know that mashing your head against the wall, right, is not an acceptable thing. It should not have to be something that you have to make clear is not an acceptable part of your relationship. That should kind of go without saying, which was the odd thing that I found about this. But I understood the point that she was making, which was that if you are perhaps a little bit more proactive, in this case she's suggesting if women were a little bit more empowered and a little bit less passive in this case, then perhaps there would be less domestic violence of this kind. And look, she has the experience with dealing with these cases, so I can only assume that there is probably, she is warranted to some degree in making the assertion that she makes. But the way that she states it, I just find it everything objectionable about victim blaming. It's the wrong kind of victim blaming. Let me read out a paragraph that she put. While of course there is never any excuse for being violent towards a partner, she has nonetheless contributed 50% to how this domestic violence situation came to be. This is the difference for me. I'm not anti-victim blaming. As I said at the beginning of this video, we all victim blame. I gave you an example with the antivirus software. But it seems to me if you're going to victim blame, it has to be done in good faith. It has to be a reasonable expectation, i.e. something, not expecting you to do something that falls outside of the societal norm. So expecting you to dress, a woman to dress in to not wear a short skirt on a Saturday night when women are all going out in short skirts on a Saturday night is an unreasonable expectation. There has to be a reasonable expectation that the suggestion will make a tangible difference to the outcome. But most importantly of all is that the blame that is applied via the victim blaming is kept entirely apart from the blame that is set upon the perpetrator. So imagine, for example, that I told you that I was stood in the street and a great big guy come up to me, walking towards me, telling me he's going to smash me in the face. For no reason other than he fancies doing it. And I described to you how he'd smashed me in the face numerous times through my wired up broken jaw. And then you said to me, well, did you not try and run away? And I say to you, no, I just stood there. Well, did you not put your hands over your face to try and shield the blows? No, I didn't bother doing that. I am sure anybody would say, well, why didn't you try and defend your face? Maybe not fight back, that might aggravate him more, but surely any normal person would shield their face. Why the fuck didn't you do that? In just the same way as with the antiviral thing, you'd say, why didn't you have antiviral software? But the difference is this. If you're suggesting with the antiviral software that by me not having antiviral software in some way diminishes the responsibility of the person who maliciously sent out that virus, then that is wrong. It's never a 50-50 situation as she suggests here, right? The person who sent out that virus is 100% responsible for the malicious result of that virus, whether I had antivirus software or not. Wouldn't it be a kind of really strange situation if a person put a virus on the internet and we held them totally culpable for their actions if you had antivirus software, but if you didn't have antivirus software, we'd say, oh, we're only going to hold you half responsible because we think the onus is on somebody to stop you performing that horrible, abhorrent behaviour of putting a fucking virus on the internet. The same thing with the guy punching me in the face. Why should I have a responsibility to have to shield my face? It makes damn good sense from my perspective to shield my face, and in terms of me being concerned for my own welfare, there is grounds to blame me for not shielding my face, but in terms of the culpability of the responsibility of the person punching me in the fucking face, in no way can they be deemed any less more to blame because I didn't bother. I didn't put myself out stopping them from punching me in the face for no justifiable reason. And this is the issue that I have with this kind of victim blaming. This kind of victim blaming is along the lines of the women wearing the wrong kind of clothes victim blaming, which is, it's not a case of whether or not it's good advice or not. It's that the way it's written, in this case saying that she's contributed 50% for the domestic violence situation, it suggests that in some ways it is diminishing the guilt of the other party. The other party, let us remember, is an adult, and an adult who we would expect to know should not be punching anybody in the fucking face. So that's where I stand on victim blaming. I am an internet shitlord, and as a result of that, I am pro victim blaming, but not in this kind of way. If you're going to victim blame, don't do it in a way that diminishes from the crime of the perpetrator of the crime. Do it with good intention. and make sure that it's reasonable and justifiable. That's pretty much what I wanted to say, and that I'm sure some people will come back on this, because I know some people claim that victim blaming is wrong. No matter which way it is done, if you think that's the case, fine, but explain to me also in terms of the antiviral situation, where we shouldn't criticise people if they haven't had antiviral software on their computer and they get a virus. Well, thank you for watching. I've kept your time long enough, and bye for now.